This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us tonight Mr. Lance Levens. Welcome, Lance. Welcome.
Glad to be here, Sam.
Well, we go back a long time, don't we?
We do.
We were buddies from many years ago, and you grew up in Macon, and you tell me you were born not far from the studio where we are right now.
Right, over on Adams Street, right.
And you spent some time at Mercer in your younger days. Is
2
that
years
correct?
at Mercer. Right.
Yes, and so you've had quite an
They were
adventure.
glad to see me go, I'm
Well,
sure.
that's right. Well, and your journey's taken you through many twists and
Lots
turns
of
in life, and
places.
actually you've become something of a literary figure. Is that a fair
Well,
statement?
I write a lot, and real proud of this book, Tatum Kane, and this is what we're going to talk about tonight.
Oh, good. With Tatum Kane. Well, good. Well, Lance, why don't we just hold the book up? That'll
Yeah.
be good. Let's see. Here's the book. Tatum Kane. Okay, there it is. Tatum Kane. You know, who exactly is Tatum Kane?
Tatum is a young man, 12 years old, growing up in Macon, central Georgia, 1961, 2, 3, that area. He's been deserted by his parents, and he lives with his grandparents. They live on a property out by the Ocmulgee River, very rural, kind of rough around the edges. And he's grown up thinking the Civil War was a wonderful thing. His grandfather celebrates all the battles, the ones lost and the ones won. Instead of having a liturgical calendar, he has a battle calendar.
Yes.
And his grandfather has in his attic a way to set up all the battles with little toys and little men and so forth. And his grandfather's a bit deranged.
As many are. in the
As
world
many
today.
are.
Yes.
And he hears the voices of the dying rebel soldiers on the battlefield. Now, this is 1962,
Yes.
so he's hearing
Yes.
100-year-old voices.
Yes.
And it sounds like he's a comic figure, and to some degree he is, but he is very truthful, and he loves his grandson deeply,
Yes.
and his grandson loves him deeply.
Yes.
So the bond between these two is very powerful. Tatum's problem is, as you can see, you astute readers out there are way ahead of me.
Oh, really?
How do you fight your way out of a cocoon of lies and misperceptions and innuendos and distortions to come to some accurate understanding of reality? Tatum thinks slavery was a good thing.
Now, he's called Tatum for what reason?
He's called Tatum as short for Antietam. His grandfather gave him this name specifically, like the prophet Hosea, who named his children terrible names.
Yes.
He was given the name which stood for the worst day in the Confederate Army.
It wasn't Gettysburg?
It wasn't Gettysburg, no. Antietam was the worst day, single day loss. Now, he didn't even do him the justice or the consideration of calling him Sharpsburg, which was the Confederate name.
Yes.
He called him the Yankee name.
Oh,
in other words, a double gouge.
Wow,
And,
wow, wow.
Tatum never batted an eye. He
Yes,
always,
yes, right,
just
right.
whatever Granddaddy wants to do, we do it.
Right.
Now, Granddaddy has been lying to him
Yes.
his entire life. Granddaddy has told him that his mom and dad deserted him when he was 3.
Yes.
Ran off to New York to become beatniks.
Yeah.
This is 62. This
That's
is
the
before
word.
hippies. There still were beatniks running around.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
long straight hair,
Right.
sunglasses. So he writes his mother letters regularly, never gets an answer. His grandfather destroys the letters, and his grandfather writes Tatum letters, pretending to be the mom,
Yes.
telling him that he wouldn't like New York. It's
Right,
a
yeah,
terrible
yes,
place to
yes,
raise
yes,
children.
yes.
He's great there with the grandmom and
Right,
granddad.
yes.
So Tatum carries this great burden in his
Yes,
heart
yes.
that his mother really doesn't want him.
Yes, yes. It's a rather painful burden.
It's a
Yes.
painful burden. So not only is he laboring under the delusions of someone who thinks the slavery was a good thing, his grandfather, but he's also lost his mom. So
Yes.
it's a, but it's not sad.
Yes.
The book is, it has its sad moments, but it's a funny book in a lot
Yes,
of ways.
yes. And a lot of Faulknerian, I mean, reading
Yeah,
the
it's a
book,
very-
there's sort of a Faulknerian
Yeah,
kind
it's a
of spin
Faulknerian
on
feel
that.
to
And
it, yeah.
not, you know, you call yourself a Southern writer, Lance?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Writers have to learn where their turf is.
yes. And,
You
in
know,
1962 in Macon, Georgia.
That's it. You know, John Cheever figured out it's got to be up there in Westchester County or
Yes, yes.
someplace. You know, John Steinbeck had to be out there in the hovels in California with the
yes.
Mexican workers. You got to figure out where your turf is.
And there's sort of, you know, sort of one of the things is the impact of change. You're sort of seeing the this other world, and I mean, in a way, in Macon, 1962, over 50 years ago. So the changes have been enormous, to put it mildly. And
Exactly.
the cultural, I guess, sense of gravity of this is the way it's always going to be. This is the way it is. Just how that occurred. And
It's a
so-
powerful force in the book.
So now
right?
I don't want you to give the book away here,
Okay, I won't.
but don't let's
Don't ever do that.
Don't
Never
do
give
that.
it
Don't do
away.
it. But you have this sort of arrangement put together. Maybe I could ask you this: the way you, as a sort of a writer, the way you do this, you have the chapters. Is that a hard thing to do to sort of put you have time sequences of time?
Right.
Did you shuffle those like cards? Do you write a chapter and then put it different places in the book, or how did you?
Writers
like-
do it lots of different ways.
Yes.
Your John Gresham, Clyde Cussler, these guys, they map out everything ahead of time.
Yes.
They know exactly what's going to happen at the end
Yes.
when they begin their first line.
Yes.
And that way you can incorporate the end into the beginning, which
Yes.
makes the beginning much more interesting
Yes.
because it's often sort of nudging you. Unfortunately, there's a kind of sterility, and I'm being judgmental here and presumptuous, forgive me, but I have to defend my métier here.
Yes.
There's a kind of predictability here in that kind of writing when you know exactly what's going to happen all the way along. On the other end is the writer who just starts from scratch and says, let's
Yes.
see where the spirit
Yes.
will lead me. I could never do that.
Yes.
I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
I'll start with interesting characters. I'll write a little bit, and then I'll make an outline.
Yes.
So it's back and forth between the text and the outline. And the outline is, it's like you're walking out into the ocean, yet you've got this life raft
Yes.
that'll keep you from sinking, right? That's my
Yes.
outline. It keeps me from sinking. And somewhere along the way, you have to learn about the vagaries and the difficulties of plotting.
Yes.
And there's where your values, your heart, your worldview all come into play. What kinds of things will you allow to happen to your characters? Do you want them to really visit that brothel and spend the family fortune there, you know?
Yes.
Do-
Might be a good chapter, actually. Attract a little
these
attention. Yes.
these are kind of the questions you have to ask, and there are always going to be people, there are going to be agents and publishers who says, we
Yes.
need more sex,
Right.
we need more violence.
Right. Yes.
And then you've got the Christian publishers now, which is a massive juggernaut out
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And they have a criteria list of 20-something criteria that you cannot have. No profanity,
Yes.
no sexual dalliances at all.
Yes.
So that would be Flannery O'Connor would be out, Walker
Real-
Percy
yeah,
would
yes,
be
yes,
out,
yes,
you know.
Yes.
Hawthorne might be out, I don't know.
Yes. Yes. So it's a difficult.
Yeah.
A major general's life is not an easy one. So a
Yeah.
writer's is not an easy one either. It requires a lot of discipline to write.
It
doesn't
is,
I mean,
and
is that tough to make yourself do that?
It is. Butt and chair, that's the name of the game. And if you don't do that,
Yes.
it's not going to happen. There's not much inspiration going on.
Yes.
The inspiration will come, but
Yes.
you got to be there when it happens.
Now, how do you do this, Lance? I mean, Presumably, you could dictate some of this. Do you type
No,
it? Do you write it
no,
out
no.
longhand?
No, you can't dictate.
You can't
No, no,
dictate
no.
it.
I
No,
can't. I
you
can't
cannot.
dictate.
No.
Because I'm more of a wordsmith.
Yes.
You know, I want to construct sentences that reflect the literary canon.
Yes.
I want sentences to tell the reader, oh, he's banking off of the wife of Bath.
Yes.
And maybe a little bit of Cymbeline. Oh, and I hear some Robert Browning in there.
Right. So, did you do that? That sounds pretty difficult. I mean, so in other words, it's like
fun.
Oh, is it?
It's
Is it?
fun. Yeah. As Robert Frost says, I'm going a sentencing.
So really, so you have little funny little, I guess, jokes tossed in the middle that only an erudite mind can pick up there.
I probably over-exaggerate that. I'm not. It's not a show-off.
Yes.
But it does lend depth to your piece.
So there's a little joke. Some of this is a little jokey.
Yeah.
And you
illusion. It's called an illusion.
Okay. All right.
Right.
That sounds good. That sounds like a good thing.
Right.
And what about the tone? I mean, maintaining your different sort of people speaking, the writer speaks.
That's hard.
And you have isn't that tough?
I mean, you have really tough. For me, it's the toughest thing of all in writing. It's sustaining the tone. Now, for the listener, tone in literature is almost like pitch in music.
Yes. Yes.
You hear a great opera singer. You don't hear any opera singers do this much unless your ear is just super, super refined. You don't hear many of them go off pitch.
Yes.
But you can hear a singer go off pitch, and when that singer goes off pitch, it's all over. It's all over. It's like they've burst the dream.
Yes.
It's gone.
Yes.
And a writer's tone is like that.
Yes.
With Tatum, it was one of the easiest for me. I usually struggle with tone, but this was one of the easiest because I wrote in first person.
Yes.
And first person sometimes is the easiest way to maintain a tone if you can maintain the right distance from your character.
Yes.
Scott Fitzgerald wrote Gatsby in the first person, and he used a slightly ironic, detached tone, which he sustains beautifully through, and it works in so many ways, thematically and imagistically. I didn't use a detached tone.
Yes.
I used an emotionally tugging tone, one that will pull at your heartstrings.
Yes.
And thanks be to God, it worked.
Yes, yes.
And I knew it was working after 3 or 4 chapters. I said, this is good.
Now, how long did it take you to write this? I mean, some people take a decade, is that right?
Tatum is about a 2-year book.
2 years, wow. 2 years is a long time.
It is.
Did you get discouraged during this at any point?
Yeah, you get discouraged. But let me give credit where credit is due. I have a writer's group.
Yes.
And I would advise any writer out there, especially prose writers, poets too.
Yes.
Get you a group.
Yes.
And I don't mean a bunch of guys that go to the bar and sit there, once every 3 months and drink and spout off what you know. Somebody that meets regularly.
Yes.
They'll read your stuff and they'll say, this is really good, or this is awful.
Now, Lance, you're quite a storyteller. I mean, I would say that, having known you for a while. And so what's the jump from being able to tell a good story to be able to put something in the novel? What's the jump that happens there?
The biggest jump is learning to see the heart of the story and turning that heart into a battle.
Yes.
It can be a battle with all sorts of enemies. Let's change the word to conflict, okay? Let's say conflict. It can be conflict between man and nature.
Yes.
It can be a conflict between man and man.
Yes.
It can be a conflict, and here's the best kind, the conflict within the heart.
Yes.
William Faulkner said in his Nobel Prize speech, that is fiction.
Yes.
The heart in conflict with itself. And so much good fiction really rests on that foundation. Look at Hamlet. What is Hamlet doing? He's conflicted about 5 or 6 different ways, but in each instance, it's him against himself. Him against himself.
Yes.
It's so much so that it loses the reader sometimes because he's gone so deeply into himself that you sometimes lose awareness of who he is.
Yes.
But in Tatum, the conflict was it's between him and his grandfather, so it's multi-leveled, him and his grandfather, within himself, that's the most powerful conflict, because he loves his grandfather, yet he realizes his grandfather is really wrong.
Yes.
And that realization comes slowly and painfully.
Well, is that a metaphor for, I guess, the world, the South in 1962? Is that sort of the metaphor there as to how
Right.
there's a lot of, obviously a lot of ancestor worship.
Right.
I mean, and the idea of this sort of your kith and kin, at least one can say that, and you.
Exactly.
So if you disown your kith and kin, you know, your beloved grandfather, who
That's
is
right, right.
so sort of, is that sort of some of the theme that's going on there?
I think you put your finger right on it. I think many Southerners grow up and they have to confront who they are at
Yes.
some point.
Yes.
It depends on where you grow up. If you grow up in Charleston, it's probably going to be more intense than if you grow up in, say, I don't know, Maryland somewhere.
Yes. Yes.
You're going to have to face, how do I feel about all this?
Yes. Well, now your book is full of Macon scenes, I must
Yeah.
say. You know, you're sort of a student of the town.
I am.
And is
I love the town.
that's kind of a I don't know. It's a digestible
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a Greek city-state. It's a human
Right,
scale. It's a
right,
human
right.
scale to Macon. It
That's
still
exactly- I love
exists.
that.
it still exists. The
Yeah,
human
right,
scale. So
right.
it's something to sort of tussle with. Now, you mentioned readers. How many readers are there? Are we in a culture where reading just doesn't happen? And if people do read, is there just some kind of purulent, I guess, interest that drives them? I mean,
Yeah.
any comments about that?
Sam, I think there are more people reading now than ever before. The question is what they're reading and on what level they're reading.
Yes.
As far as really good literature that's being written, I don't think there's ever been much of that.
Yes.
But more books are being published than have ever been published. And with the digital world, with e-publishing and indie publishing, you have so much out there. There's far too much. You know, we're
Yes,
just all suffering
yes.
from too much information. And the kids, they're on the internet so much, they'll read stuff off the internet that's being sold on the internet as
Yes.
fiction,
Yes.
as opposed to going to Barnes and Noble and actually looking at
Yes.
something.
Well, now, when you want to create something, do you sort of isolate yourself? I mean, the idea is that if you have these, you're trying some internal
Right.
vision that you want
Right.
to put down on paper. I
Right.
mean, is it? You mentioned a writer's group, but is it?
Right.
Do you need solitudes? I mean, is there too much?
No, I don't need solitude. I mean, some writers probably do, you know, but I don't need solitude. When you're writing a novel, I think any good novelist will tell you this. When you're writing a novel, it consumes your life.
Yes.
It will come to you in the middle of the night.
Yes.
It'll come to you at a party. It'll come to you in the middle of church. It'll come
Yes.
to you in the bathroom.
Yes.
And then you have to decide, okay, I'm going to stop right now. Am I going to put it down? Or I'm going
Yes.
to try to hold it in my head.
Well, it's sort of in a way, a disease. If you
It's
say
a
that.
disease.
So it's not altogether a pleasant disease either. Is
The
it?
Romans had a name, the coacagente scribendi, the writer's disease, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes. So, good. So, I notice you've thrown some Latin terms out. You're sort of at least a student of Latin.
Right,
Is that
right,
correct?
right.
What about, you've been exposed a lot to Latin. I mean, and I noticed that it's not so Latinate.
No, I
your
tried to
book is not.
avoid.
Did you
I tried
directly
to-
try and avoid that?
I
Yes.
tried to avoid that because I'm trying to create in this book an overall tone.
Yes.
And I didn't want to bring that into that level, that world into Tatum Kane's world, because I thought it would be distracting from the emotional
Yes.
shot I'm looking for. I
Yes.
was looking for.
Now, the name Cain has some interest to it. Any biblical connection there?
You can draw your own conclusions. Honestly, though, when I put that in, I love names, and I will, deliberate names for a long time. But I'm not one of these people who want you to go straight to the Huguenot battles of 1640.
Yes, yes.
I don't do that.
It's not a Cain and Abel kind of thing
No,
here. I
no,
was trying
no,
to,
yeah.
You mentioned you
Yeah.
had your little jokes in there. I was
Yeah,
wondering if that
yeah.
might play a role.
Well, it was tough for him, but he's not the Cain who
Well, let's try
killed his
Latin
brother.
again. Tatum, is that, or Tatum? Is there any Latin
No,
in that?
no Latin
try-
there,
And
no.
or on or anything?
I think
no?
it's a French word, actually. Yeah,
From
yeah,
Latin,
yeah.
maybe. I mean,
Could be, yeah.
I mean,
could
we
be.
could. I don't want to get too Byzantine here in
Right,
our
right.
conversation here.
I wouldn't know how to be Byzantine. I have, I'm clueless.
Okay, well, good. So, Well, now, are you considering another literary effort here, Lance? After it's sort of like having given birth here.
Yeah.
It's been a difficult experience.
I've got, thank you, Sam, for asking about that. I have one online called Cottage for Inhuman Stedman. That's another novel. It's another Bildungsroman, as the Germans called it, a coming-of-age novel, like Tatum Kane. I have a new one that I'm pushing to publishers now called Mr. Hooks.
Mr. Hooks.
Mr. Hooks is the story of ADA, Assistant District Attorney in Macon.
Once again, we're in Macon.
We're in Macon again.
Right.
And he's burned out, too many thugs, too many bad deals, and his wife has had 3 miscarriages.
Yes.
So he is at the point where he doesn't want to have relations with his wife anymore because he's afraid he's going to have another miscarriage.
Yes.
Of course, she is not pleased with that.
Right, I would imagine so. Yes.
So
a little domestic turmoil.
He's in a terrible situation, and he throws himself into the Ocmulgee River in a fit of just outright despair.
Was that a suicide gesture because of the pollution? It's 2 feet deep or so?
We're going to have to pretend that it's deep enough for somebody to drown, Sam. And in the river, he actually sees a fish.
Yes.
This was harder to explain than Tatum Kane.
Yes.
He actually sees this giant catfish, and he's in such a vulnerable state that this fish touches some deep chord in him.
Yes.
It looks mosaic. It looks pre-something.
Yes,
you know?
right.
And
antediluvian.
And he comes out of the water and he thinks about this, and it sort of jars his world. And as he begins to digest this image, and this image works itself out in his dreams and so forth, things happen to him. That's the frou-frou literary part.
Yes.
A lot of it is just a stone-cold country killer thriller.
Yes.
There are 3 meth heads that he happens to run into, one of whom has Tourette's, and he can't stop from cursing, and they're...
It's difficult if you're a methadone or methamphetamine abuser and you're a Tourette's syndrome. That's a rather bad combination, I must say. Yes, it's a bad combination.
And they decide that my hero, Potter, wants to lock him up. So they try to kill him, and then his wife gets involved. They kidnap his wife. And anyway, it's a fascinating book. It's got lots of dimensions. It's got some literary stuff. It's got some thriller fun stuff. It's a little rougher around the edges than Tatum. It's got some vulgarity, and it's got, because you're not dealing with nice people.
Yes. Well, many people are not nice.
That's right.
Many people are quite.
This is my complaint with the Christian.
Yes.
The Christian list, there are so many unnice people out there. That means that they're excluding all these people from their books, and this is a particular soapbox of mine, so I'm not going to get on it.
Well, I mean, so you obviously have strong opinions in this regard. It's not an easy thing to be a writer. You mentioned the writers group is a useful thing. Do you sort of bounce ideas back and forth?
Absolutely. I'm blessed that this group has been together now for 5 years.
Yes.
They're mature. They're all serious.
Yes.
And they're writing different things. One's writing a romance novel. One's writing a memoir of being a narcotics agent in Paraguay.
Wow. Nice place, Paraguay.
Yeah, and one's writing the story of her 33-year-old autistic boy who just passed away. So there are all sorts of lives and consciousnesses coming into play here, and that's really good for a writer.
Yes.
It's good to see all that, mixing it up, and then to be courteous.
Yes.
Understanding and supportive of the other writers, all that is like a family.
Well, now Savannah is, maybe one could say it's down on the coast, but it attracts people, I guess, of a cultural bent. I mean, literary people and creative people and artists, and it's sort of a crucial kindling temperature for that kind of thing. Do you find that's the case? I mean, it's sort of an attractive place for a writer or a cultural figure?
It's certainly an attractive place.
Yeah, it is nice, isn't it?
It's become very beautiful in good ways and bad ways. There are plenty of writers in Savannah. Probably we don't get together often enough,
Yes.
the other writers, but our group has hung together tightly.
Yes.
And I'm so blessed, as I said before, by that. I think we have an art school in Savannah now called Savannah College of Art and Design.
A rather famous place.
It's become a famous place. They are producing all kinds of interesting folks, and they've transformed the city. If you haven't been to Savannah in 20 years,
Yes.
take a trip.
Right.
You will be blown away.
Now, how about Macon? So, in other words, what I'm going to transfer this conversation, you know,
Yeah.
so it's a culturally
I know where you're
interesting
going.
place. So
Yes.
maybe something could be done here.
No.
Any thoughts about that?
No.
Absolutely not. Why?
Don't
why
want it to change. Don't want it to change.
Why? You know, you'd rather like preserve it without being. It's a different.
Without casting aspersions on SCAD and all the rich people that have moved to Savannah,
Yes. Yes.
I love Macon.
Yes.
And I don't know how to say this without being offensive.
Well, don't then.
Okay.
No, you can do it. No, you don't. Just think about it
when a
carefully.
city explodes into such beauty like this, I'm always standing back and saying, "What's really going on
Yes.
here?"
Yes.
You know, Macon's a wonderful place.
Yes. Well, that's a
Enough
good
said.
But you'd rather not see artist colonies here, or well, there are actually.
I
I'll tell you,
think
things
there
are
are
going that direction.
some writers here, and then painters and poets. You know,
I'll make the comment. There
Yeah.
is, there's something stirring here,
Mhm,
and it's an attractive place for many
Mhm.
reasons and many good things about it.
Mhm.
And maybe a step will go that direction for better or worse. That may be the case.
Well, you have the Crossroads Writers Conference, which a lot of people don't know about, which
Well, what is
stems
that? Well, why don't you
out of
say
Mercer, and
Why don't you talk about that? What
it's
is that?
Mercer faculty, but also Middle Georgia writers, and some from the northern part of the state also. I don't think they've been into business very long,
Yes.
but once a year they have a get together, and they have readings and some awards
Yes,
also,
yes.
and you've had some good poets come out of this area. One just passed away not recently. A guy that we grew up with named Seaburn Jones.
Yes, I
Right,
remember.
right,
And he
right.
was interesting name. And
Interesting name. Interesting old Southern name,
Yes.
Seaburn. And he was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize way back about 15 years ago, I think.
Yes.
He's an imagist, very sort of
Right,
surrealistic
right.
writing, not my cup of tea, but it was pretty good stuff.
And you've written poetry too, have you?
I write a lot of poetry, been published a lot, yeah.
That's sort of how do you find the two disciplines, prose versus?
They're great. They're great. If you want to write a good sentence, be able to write a good sentence, it helps to know some poetry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, how about words, Lance? I mean, are you a
Yeah.
minimalist? Do you need like a law? It's whether there are 27
question,
words.
good question.
You want to write an 800 word vocabulary? Is that better? Or
What's your goal? What's your
Yes,
goal? What are you
yes,
shooting for?
Yes.
Is your main character loquacious,
Yes.
garrulous? Does he
Yeah.
talk a lot?
Yes.
Or are your main characters Ernest Hemingway types who sit around and just emit 3 or 4 words, you know, between drinks of wine, you know?
Yes.
You have to decide who your characters are.
Well, Lance, it's been great talking to you.
Good to talk with you,
I wish
Sam.
you well as you go
Yeah.
forward in your literary career, and we'll have to have you back again and
I'd
talk
love
about
to.
talk about another book.
I'd love
so
to.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.